The Giants have agreed to a 5-year, $90 million extension with Logan Webb, and it really does appear to be a win for all parties involved, including, or maybe even especially, the fans.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on this show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, and I'm a lifelong fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts, including YouTube. Check us out there if you have not already, and hit that subscribe button if you are watching on YouTube. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. And you know what else is guaranteed is this new 5-year, $90 million extension for none other than homegrown ace of the Giants, Logan Webb. Now, he hasn't pitched quite like an ace so far this season, but man, the last couple of years, he really broke out. And this is something that people have been clamoring for a while. And, you know, I'm always reiterating, like, it's not like he was going to reach free agency at the end of this upcoming season. The Giants still had 3 years of team control remaining, 23, 24, and 2025. Importantly, this 5-year extension doesn't start until next year. And so it's really 6 years that the Giants now have Logan Webb locked up, including this year. And of course, he's already been here. He debuted in 2019. So when all is said and done, we're talking about a guy who, you know, assuming things go normally and as expected, will be here for at least from 2019 through 2028. And so, you know, like I said, the fans have been clamoring for, you know, a player to rally behind and buy a jersey and know that they're going to be here long term. Well, this is your answer. This is your number one guy. Obviously, you'd like some position players to be in a similar category where they're homegrown and they're good and you extend them and they're here a long time. They've got some guys, but not quite on the Logan Webb level. I mean, Thairo Estrada, not that he's homegrown, but is starting to really emerge for me. David Villar has a chance, has been pretty impressive in the major leagues, and you got others coming, Casey Schmidt, potentially Kyle Harrison, obviously a pitcher as well. But for Webb, let's just kind of break this one down and what it means. So he was already earning $4.5 million this year in his first year of arbitration, and the extension then starts next year, where, again, the first 2 years of this extension were arbitration years. And so when we look at the value of the contract, it's not like 5 years, $90 million. A lot of people say, wow, huge bargain. And it may be, but part of it is that he wasn't going to be a free agent for a couple more years, 3 more seasons, actually. And so he's only going to make $8 million next year, and then only $12 million the year after that. And so those are the arbitration years. They're bought out for a total of $20 million. And then the 3 free agent years that get bought out here, ages 29, 30, and 31, go for $23 million, $23 million, $24 million. And so it's a good deal for the team in that you're not having to, like, if you just waited until he naturally reached free agency 3 seasons from now, you'd probably have to give him like a 5, 6, 7, 8-year deal starting in 2026. And then you're paying him, you know, into his mid-30s. And I think that's where they get uncomfortable. Whereas if you start the 5-year deal when the player is 27, then that's a different story. And also, it's a little bit discounted because, like I said, the arbitration years are just kind of naturally discounted. And so it's 3 free agent years at $70 million, 2 arbitration years at $20 million, and that's this deal. And it's, you know, beyond the monetary value and all that, Logan Webb has just been a great representative of the San Francisco Giants. I think he's become very much a fan favorite, probably the most popular overall. Well, there's Brandon Crawford, but that's kind of a different story. We're talking about a new era of Giants baseball, not the Crawford is a, I don't want to just call him a holdover, but when we project forward, Crawford's not going to be here for another 5-6 years, just plain and simple because of his age. And so, I don't know, Webb really emerged. I mean, we can talk about just the character and all that, but just getting into some numbers. I mean, in 2021, that's when he broke out, had a 3.03 ERA, 2.72 fielding independent pitching, followed it up last year with a somewhat concerning decline in strikeout rate from 26.5% in 2021 to 20.7% in 2022, but still managed an ERA that was actually better than the ERA in the previous season. This year, he's just made 3 starts, and the numbers are wonky, but that's just something that can happen over a 3-start sample. So if we just combine, even including this year with there must have been a scoring change because he had an ERA that was like 6.55, and now I'm looking at it and it's 4.76. So there must have been a hit was changed to an error and it took some runs off the ERA there. But combining 2021, 2022, and 2023, Logan Webb has a 3.04 ERA, a 2.97 fielding independent pitching, and a 3.06 expected fielding independent pitching. This is just an example of how in small samples, sometimes I'm always saying like the ERA is so much higher than the xFIP, and that suggests that the ERA is going to come down. Well, in the bigger sample of Logan Webb's last 3 years, all 3 of those numbers, the ERA, the FIP, and the xFIP, are almost identical, and that's what I'm talking about. So anyway, and all 3 of those numbers, by the way, about 25% better than league average. And so he's a ground ball machine. Ground ball rate over that 3-year span, 58%. League average is around 42%. And this is the percentage of balls that are put in play. How often are they on the ground? And for him, again, close to 6 out of 10 balls put in play are on the ground, whereas the league average is closer to 4 out of 10. And that's a big difference. He's one of the best ground ball pitchers in the game. Sinker, slider, changeup, they all have the potential to be plus pitches. Also, with the decrease in strikeout rate last year came a little bit of a dip in velocity. And so they clearly believe that they're not concerned about some of the stuff we saw last year in terms of, like I said, the strikeouts and the velocity. And then the start to this season has been weird in that the strikeout rate is way back up. The walk rate is really good, but he's allowed some homers. And that's kind of where I say the xFIP. If you've listened to yesterday's episode, we talk all about xFIP, and it's just kind of saying if you weren't allowing these home runs, which we shouldn't really expect to continue, what should the results be? And for Webb, his xFIP is 2.59 despite the 4.76 earned run average on the season. And so, yeah, it's only been 3 starts, so I'm not reading into the results this year, and I don't think anyone else really is either. So this is just good news. It's also a win for the front office. Let me be clear, and just the organization at large, some much needed goodwill probably coming from the fans because of this. And so it's great. If you want to go buy a Logan Webb jersey, go right ahead. You know for a fact he's under contract for 6 seasons, counting this one, and he's already been here for several. So great news all the way around for the San Francisco Giants. So coming up in just a minute, we're going to turn the page, talk about the catcher position a little bit, where Roberto Pérez, season over. He was like maybe going to be their primary catcher. His season is over. And we'll also get into a bunch of mailbag questions. So all of that in just a minute. But before we get into it, this episode is brought to you by Rocket Money. Do you know how much your subscriptions really cost? Most Americans think they spend around $80 a month on subscriptions, but the actual total is closer to $200, more than 2 times as much. If you don't know exactly how much you're spending every month, you need Rocket Money. I needed it myself. There were so many things I didn't realize I was paying every month, and you know how it can be. It's scattered all over the internet, and to have it consolidated in one place makes it so much easier and just simply saves you a bunch of money. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills all in one place. Over 3 million people have used Rocket Money, saving the average person up to $720 a year. So stop throwing your money away, cancel unwanted subscriptions, and manage your expenses the easy way by going to rocketmoney.com/LockedOnMLB. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedonmlb, rocketmoney.com/lockedonmlb. This episode is also brought to you by Game Time. Buying tickets to your favorite event, whether it's the Giants or a concert or a play or whatever, shouldn't be so stressful. And I know for me, when I'm using some other websites trying to go to the Giants game, I might be hit by hidden fees. I might, if I'm visiting on the road and I've never seen the stadium, to get an image of the seats, the view from the seats would be really helpful, but I can't get those either. And I'm worried about getting the best price. Well, with Game Time, all of that is taken care of. You get images of seat views, and most importantly to me is the lowest price guarantee, which means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, here we go. We're going to get into the surgery, season-ending surgery for Roberto Pérez, at least mention it, and we are going to get to a bunch of mailbag questions as well. Thanks for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers, on Monday, we'll be recapping a big series in Detroit for the Giants in which they should be expected to win this series. And so, do they do it, or is it another disappointing series loss like they had against a team they should have beat in the Royals? The Everydayers will hear about it on Monday. So, getting into, I just want to mention, Roberto Pérez really stinks for him. I mean, the same kind of thing happened to him last year where he barely played and then he had a serious injury. It was his hamstring. He just tore it completely, and he had season-ending surgery. And that happened again, sadly for him. He had a rotator cuff injury, and the Giants announced yesterday that his season is over. And so the catcher position was already unstable for the Giants, and I don't want to say it just got more unstable because we already knew he was going to be out. He was already put on the 60-day injured list. But, Joey Bart is back up and getting an opportunity. It's funny. I really noticed that his framing was quite good in the game that he played most recently against the Dodgers. And then there was some tweet coming out the next day that said he had one of the best framing games of any catcher this season in that game. It looks like he's worked on that framing, and then he also made a really nice throw. And so, we need to see more at bats. He also needs to hit a little bit, and of course, there's the power potential is there, but also the high strikeout potential is there. And when I say high strikeout, people are concerned about the Giants' team strikeout rate of 28%. Joey Bart's career strikeout rate is 38.5%, and so it's much higher than what many. It's odd because I feel like it's the same people who are critical of the current Giants strikeout rate who also are critical of me when I criticize Joey Bart for striking out. It's an odd dynamic, but he's going to get some run here. Gary Sánchez is in AAA and hasn't performed well, but they're saying he's rusty. He didn't play in spring training, so he's kind of working off the rust there. And so a lot going on at that position. He has an opt-out if he's not in the major leagues by May 1st, which is kind of creeping up on us here. So getting to some mailbag questions now, though, David says, how aggressive do you think the Giants will be in terms of promoting prospects this year? This is the easiest and quickest way for the Giants to get younger and more athletic. The team has made some improvements in this area, but not enough. So I'm gonna take a little bit of a contrarian stand here, which is that just simply getting younger and more athletic. I think there tends to be several of these mailbag questions are when are the Giants just going to let the kids take over this team? And there's a line between getting younger and more athletic, but also you've got to perform. You cannot just simply be fast and a good defender. You also have to hit a little bit. And with some of these guys, I'm not so sure it's going to happen. Like I've mentioned with Bryce Johnson, so far it's a tiny sample, but for example, he's come up to the plate 20 times this season. It's, again, a tiny sample, but just to illustrate the point, he has literally struck out in 10 of those 20 plate appearances. And so in his major league career, we're talking 21 games played. It's not a big sample. I'm not saying it's reliable, but he's hit 132 with a 154 on base and a 211 slugging. It's a -4 weighted runs created plus. So there's a fine line between like, let the kids play, but this team is trying to compete. You can't they're not just going to throw a bunch of young players out there and fail. I think they're going to give opportunities to guys they believe can perform. And also they've got a lot of kind of, if not good, at least average, but also above average, like veterans on this team. When we look at Michael Conforto, when he's healthy, we'll see if he has to go on the IL or anything with this calf issue that he came out of the last game with. Mitch Haniger, Mike Yastrzemski, Austin Slater, and in the infield, Wade is locked in. Tyler Estrada is a good player. Brandon Crawford, obviously, we know what he is. And David Villar is getting an opportunity. And Joey Bart behind the plate. So there's not a lot of room. And then you look at Jock Peterson. Like, where exactly are you, like, taking guys out to just thrust in a bunch of young players? And so the opportunities are going to kind of come as they arise, like through injury or perhaps underperformance. But most of the guys, like, on, like, veteran major league contracts like Jock Peterson, Michael Conforto, Mitch Haniger, as long as they're healthy, they're going to play. You're not going to see some young players just replacing those guys. So, like Bryce Johnson, Elliot Ramos, they're getting opportunities largely because of some injuries in the outfield right now. You look at a guy like Casey Schmidt, there's more specific questions about him later, so I won't go into too much detail about him, but there's gonna have to be an opportunity somewhere, because right now you've got David Villar kind of performing, and you've got Brandon Crawford at short, you've got Estrada at second. Where does Casey Schmidt even fit? And so that would be a good problem to have, but also I just think essentially not super aggressive with just promoting young players. I think they're doing it as needed when they have injuries, but this is not going to be a team that just like DFAs all their veterans and just thrusts in a bunch of minor leaguers who probably won't do well. They're only going to give opportunities to guys they believe will do well. Just like they limit Elliot Ramos to facing left-handed pitching, it's because they don't believe he will do well against right-handed pitching. He hasn't even done well against left-handed pitching. So, but there are guys coming. I mean, Schmidt and others are coming, but they're not going to be ultra aggressive with it, and it's going to be as needed. Next question comes from Lance, who says, when is it time to worry about Mitch Haniger? Seems like the timeline keeps getting pushed back by the team. And I'm already worried. I don't like this one bit. Just because he's got a track record of injuries, and the fact that first he hurts his oblique, we hear it's mild, and then they were hopeful that he could rejoin the team for the home opener initially, and then we don't really hear anything, and then we hear that he was delayed because he had back tightness or something, and he's beginning to swing off a tee. That was several days ago now. Hopefully he's progressed beyond that, but just something that initially was mild turns into something that lingers, and then there's a back, and then there's no timeline. It's not ideal at all, and they said they were like super confident he was healthy, but soft tissue injuries like this, he may have been healthy when they signed him, but he's not healthy now. And so I don't know. I mean, at the end of the day, if he plays like 5 months out of the season, that's going to be great. But I want to see him out there. He's an important part of this team. So is Michael Conforto, who also has a little injury thing going on right now. And so I need those guys. One of my keys to the season, I said, like, at least one of those two needs to have a big year for the Giants to get to where they want to go. And if they really want to have a good year, they need both of those guys to have big years. And so Conforto's, I think, on his way, but hopefully the calf issue doesn't linger. Anyway, the next question is about the situation with Casey Schmidt and David Villar, and how does an opportunity open up for Casey Schmidt if David Villar is continuing to play well? So we'll get into it in just a minute. But before we do, this episode is brought to you by my new favorite game, Ultimate Baseball GM. Have you ever dreamed like me of being a major league general manager? Well, now is your chance to put those skills to the test with Pro Baseball GM. It's the coolest game I've played in a long time. You are the GM of your team, and it's not as easy as you might think. You've got to hire the right coaches and staff, manage team finances, scout and draft players, manage difficult personalities, manage team chemistry, injuries, navigate your franchise through free agency, and all the ups and downs of a season. So realistic, which is, I love that challenge. And, you can get fired. That's the funny thing. I've been competing with the fellow Locked On hosts, and people are reporting that they're getting fired. And so you really have to put your skills to the test. It's a great challenge if you're a true baseball fan. So Locked On Giants listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo Locked On in the game store. So make sure to check it out. To download the game, just visit probaseballgm.com, scan the code, or look it up on the app stores. That's probaseballgm.com. Ultimate Baseball GM. Start your dynasty today. All right, here we go. More mailbag questions. The next one coming from... Who does it come from? J.R. Nelson, who says, if David Villar remains healthy and productive, how much longer will we have to wait for Casey Schmidt to become an everyday player? And honestly, I don't really know the answer. Is that a good answer? Probably not. But so Casey Schmidt, just to check in on him. And by the way, if I don't get to this question, at least one of you is asking me to do more kind of prospect updates. And I hear you, and I want to do that. And I'm trying to get better at that. And, we'll do a little bit of it right now, in that Casey Schmidt has played 12 games in AAA, 54 plate appearances, and the numbers are a little strange, as they can be in a small sample. And what's weird to me is that, on the one hand, he's hitting, if you're just a batting average aficionado, you're like, he's ready. He's hitting 353. But then the on base is actually lower, which is possible, but it's like sacrifice hits. If you hit a sac fly, it like lowers your on base percentage, but it doesn't change your average. That's how that can happen. So a 353 average, but a 352 on base and a 451 slugging. So it's not a lot of power yet. He's got 0 homers. He's got 5 doubles and 13 singles, no triples. And like I said, the walk rate, he's only walked in 1.9% of his plate appearances. He's walked a total of, I'm not seeing the one time. So he's played in AAA. He's got 16 games in AAA, and he's come to the plate 70 times, counting last year as well. And he's literally walked one time in 70 plate appearances. So that's a little bit, I don't want to say alarming, but what's so interesting about the batting line overall is that it's a very lively offensive environment. I kind of chalk this up to the small sample of the early AAA season, in that by weighted runs created plus, even though he's hitting 353, he's been below average offensively. And so that just means the league average is bonkers offense, essentially. And so on the surface, it's like, oh, he's doing well. But beneath the surface, it's like he's actually been below average for the league, and he's not walking, and he hasn't hit for power yet. And so I'm not like worried, but I'm just saying they're not going to like rush to call him up based on what I'm seeing here. And of course, he's done a really good job defensively from what I've seen so far. So that wasn't really your question, but the question is that what I just said matters to answer the question. How much longer will we have to wait for Casey Schmidt? It's hard to predict, but if Crawford struggles or gets hurt, it could open the door at shortstop, or, Estrada can move to short, Villar can move to second, and Schmidt could get called up and play third. And so, but if Villar and Crawford are both healthy and productive all season, it might be hard to fit Casey Schmidt onto the roster. Although I think they want to do it, because I really believe there's a chance that maybe they view him as the answer at the shortstop position after 2023, when Brandon Crawford's contract is up. And so at least he could be an option there. And so if, this is also going to depend on if Schmidt performs in AAA. So it's too early to say he is or isn't, I think. But I think they want to give him a look this year, no matter what, as long as he doesn't just like tank in AAA. And so we probably have to wait a while. I don't think they're going to call him up today. Probably at some point in the middle of the season or at the very least towards the end, because I think they want to give him that look to see if he can play short. And if it's not him, maybe Estrada becomes the shortstop, and maybe, like I said, VR goes to second and Schmidt's at third, something. Or it's just Schmidt at third and VR, or Schmidt at short and VR at third and Estrada at second. Anyway, next question from Will, who says, how long do you give Sabol to get his offense going before pulling the plug? So this is another one of those cases, I think, where the injuries have given him more rope. And so right now, I mean, he's their backup catcher because Roberto Pérez is hurt and Austin Wynns was DFA'd. I don't think I've even mentioned that. But he doesn't have minor league options, and they wanted to bring up Bart, and they didn't want to get rid of Sabol. And so they had to DFA Wynns to get him off the roster. You can't send him down. And so right now, he's the only backup catcher. And after that, it's just Gary Sánchez, who doesn't appear ready yet. And so I think Sabol's going to have some run here. I would believe with that opt-out for Gary Sánchez on May 1st, that's going to give Sabol essentially until then I wouldn't say at least, like if Sánchez starts just tearing it up and Sabol continues to struggle at the plate, then maybe they just make a move and then it's Joey Bart and Gary Sánchez. But also he's playing outfield. So he's your backup catcher and he's kind of your starting left fielder. And so that gets a little scary for me. Like if something happens to Sabol, you lost your backup catcher and your like starting left fielder against right-handed pitching. There's some danger there. And it's because they have so many injuries in the outfield with Haniger, Slater, Bryce Johnson, Conforto a little bit banged up. So it's not that they don't have depth. It's just that they've had a lot of injuries there in that specific position. But you also have guys like Wade and even Jock Peterson as emergency options to move to the outfield. And if it's Wade, I think he could do a fine job defensively, and then it would open up first base for some deserving hitters like J.D. Davis or Wilmer Flores to get more like everyday playing time. So your question was about Sabol. I think he's got probably a couple more weeks at least. And I mean, for all we know, he starts hitting and then he sticks around. But I don't think it's like now or never time yet at all for him. Anyway, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen. Every dayers on Monday, we're going to be discussing, can the Giants win a series against the Tigers, who have one of the worst records in the league? It's baseball. Doesn't always mean you're going to win a series just because you should. And so big one for the Giants. Can they turn their season around off to a little bit of a slow start? So everydayers will hear that on Monday. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen. Once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like this show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. It helps me out a lot, so thanks in advance, and thanks to everyone who's done so already. Cannot wait to be with you again on Monday. Thanks again for listening. You are now Locked On Giants.